Hello and welcome to our video today on estimating and quoting. If you haven't checked out our other videos, I suggest you go and take a look at those, especially those on tasks and processes, because you're going to need to have some tasks and processes set up if you want to make a quote. If you've made a job in the past before, then you're going to be able to make a quote. It's going to be very simple and very easy, and it is very comparative to making a job. To get to the quoting and estimating section, we're just going to go to our navigation over here on the left, expand our operations, and come down to quotes. Once we've brought that up, we are going to see that we've got some quotes that we've played around with before, but we're going to go ahead and make a brand new one to start with. And we're going to go over a couple different things here. One, we're going to show how to do a quote with a time and material estimate, and we're also going to show how to do a quote with a fixed cost, and we're going to talk about each of those as we go on. Our add quote button, and that's going to bring us to our first page of the quote that is going to allow us to input some general information. We've got a short description, a customer filled, a long description. We've got a place for tags, a quantity filled, a unit of measure, a expiration date, a quote message, and a checkbox for template, which we're going to discuss exactly what that is here in a second. The short description, long description, if you've made a job before, you'll know that there's a short description, a long description, and the reason for that is the short description is just it's what's going to show up on the app for your employees so they know what they're working on, where a long description is going to be where you can put more details if you need to. For more of the office staff's information. And so we're just going to go ahead and fill these out. You can see that these little red asterisks, however you say that, denotes that it is a required filled. And we're going to see some things happen though with this template button, and we're going to show that here in a moment. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and fill this out. And so in this demo site, we've set this up as a tire shop. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just say this is for getting somebody set up with getting some tires or some work done on their vehicle. And so let's say this guy's name is Frank, so we're going to say Frank's truck. And we're going to go ahead and select Frank. Do we got a Frank? Oh man, we've got a Frank. And we're going to say, oh, he's got an F-350, wants to get new tires and alignment. I'm going to skip tags for right now. A quantity, this is where you are deciding what it is that you want to report that your guys are working on. Or another way to say that is you get to choose what this is going to be. If we think about what this quantity is going to be, what is it? Is it that they're going to work on one truck? Are they going to work on 4 tires? I mean, if this is a semi-truck, is it 6 tires? That's really what you've got to decide. There's pros and cons to every which way you could look at it. And in the end, we've designed Modius to work for however you work. And so if you want to count it as a truck, that you're going to say they're going to work on 1 vehicle, then that's great. If they want to count and say, you know what, I want them to keep track, and it's 4 tires. Whatever that's going to be is entirely up to you. And that's what that quantity unit of measure is over here. You have the ability to, you see we've got a tire install. You know, you can say, okay, it's 1 tire install, or is it 4 tire installs? That's up to you. Is it 4 tires, or is it 1 vehicle? And that's entirely up to you. And the reason why it's important what you choose here is because this information is going to be passed on to the employee when he clocks in so that he knows what he's working on. So if it says, you know what, there's going to be 4 tires or 4 tire installs, however you'd want to word that when your employee clocks in and he looks at that information on the job, that he knows, hey, you know what, I'm going to install these 4 tires. Whereas if you say it's 1 vehicle, you know, you've trained your employees to understand what those things mean. For our intents and purposes here, we're going to say vehicle, and we're going to say, you know what, we're working on 1 vehicle. And so the expiration date here is required. And this expiration date, as well as this quote message, if we come over to our settings, if we expand that and come over just to our general info, let's open that in a new tab so we don't lose what we're working on here. And let's open this up, and you can see down here you have a place to put a default quote message. You also have the ability to put the default number of days that you want a quote to be valid for. So if I said, typed in here, thanks for the quote, or thanks for the opportunity, and then I came here and said that our quotes are good for 30 days, then when I make a new quote, it's automatically going to add 30 days to today's date. So right here you can see the expiration date is just today. It would actually add 30 days to that. It also bring in that default quote message, and you can see over here that we have not set up these, so it did not bring those over. But that is what those are for, and that is how you can set those up. So one of those things, if you haven't set it up and you're going to be doing a lot of quotes and you've got kind of a standard, maybe you've got terms and conditions you want to put on the bottom of there. And then if you've got, your quotes are always good for 30 days, you definitely want to put 30 days there. That way you're not having to fill this out each time. But we're going to fill it out because it ain't that hard. Thanks for the opportunity. I can spell it right. And we're going to say that our quote's good for a week. All right. So let's talk about what this template is. Let's say that this is a quote. This is something that I do often. I'm going to do tires and alignment on a regular basis. And so maybe I don't want to be as detailed with this. I don't want to select a customer. Maybe I want to just save this quote as kind of a template to pull from and to copy and duplicate from. If that's the case, you can go ahead and check that box, and that's going to allow you to be able to save this without entering all this information. Like you're not going to have to enter a customer or a quantity or anything like that. You're just going to be able to save just the bare minimum in here so that you can make an estimate and that you can then copy and use that as a template. But even if you do actually make the quote, I'll show you in a moment on the quote list that you can still copy any quote. If you've made a quote, you can just copy that quote, and it's going to make a duplicate of it, and you can just update it from there. So either way, whether you want to save it as a template or whether you want to just make a copy of an existing quote, either way is going to work exactly how you want it to. So with that, we've got all of our fields filled out. We're ready to go to the step 2, which is going to be our actual estimate. So just click next down here on the bottom right. But here we are on step 2 of our quote. Let's kind of take a look here and take a moment and kind of look at what we've got. We've got our quote information here. You can see there's our quote ID, our customer, short description, long description, quantity 1, vehicle, expiration date, and our quote message. You can also see we've got some additional sales lines here that is empty, as well as a sales summary with a labor cost, a material cost, additional sales cost, and finally we've got some totals down here with a total sales cost and a total unit sales cost. So let's go ahead and start populating this. The first step we're going to do is we're going to add a sub job. So just like if you've made a job in Motives before, you know that you've got a job and you've got a sub job. And then beneath each of those you have a process and then a task. Again, if you have not created a process or a task and you're not sure what those are and what I'm talking about, you need to go and watch those videos. This video is going to make much more sense if you know what a task and a process is. In that video, I believe, is just 5 or 6 minutes long. So if you haven't seen it yet, go and watch that for 5 or 6 minutes. Definitely worth your time because it's going to make a lot more sense with what we're doing here. But we're going to go ahead and right now we're going to click Add Sub Job, and here we've got our departments, and so you're able to kind of classify each of these sub jobs to different departments if you desire. This just has a shop, so we're just going to say shop right here. Go ahead and click save. And now we've got our first sub job, and we're going to go ahead and add our process. And that process, again, is just a way to group tasks together. So we're going to go ahead and add a process and select our process. And again, in other videos, we explain what these different processes are. We're just going to grab one. I'm not even sure what's in it. If it doesn't have anything, okay, there we go. It had some tasks in it. So for shop work, it's got a tire install and alignment, which actually works out to be exactly what we needed. Remember we talked about Frank was going to get an alignment and he's going to get some tires. And so we're going to go ahead and add those, and we've got kind of the skeleton of what we want, right? We're going to do a task of installing tires, and we're going to do the task of an alignment. And over here you can see we've got some new fields. We've got an estimated time, we've got a production standard, we've got a quoting rate, again that was set up in the task, we've got a profit type, profit percent, an estimated price, and we've got include as a line item or exclude from price. And then over here you have the ability to delete that line, as well as move this task up or down in order of appearance. Remember that however you set this up, just like a job, whatever order you set this up in, that is the same order that's going to appear on your user's app. So if you say tire install first and alignment second, when those guys clock into the app, they're going to see tire install first and alignment second. So you want to keep that in mind for ease of instruction. If you've got certain things that need to come first, it's always best to put it in the order that you would expect them to do it in, so that your guys aren't getting confused. So let's go ahead and make some estimations here. And so you can see in our production standard we've got total hours, total minutes, total seconds, hours per piece, minutes per piece, and seconds per piece. And now those bottom three that are per piece, that means per quantity. So, for instance, if I said that it's going to take me 1 hour, it means it's going to take 1 total hour to do these tires. Now let's say, for instance, instead of 1 vehicle I had said 4 tires, and I said 1 hour, it would still just be 1 hour. 1 hour to do all of that work. But if I said 1 and I change my production standard to hours per piece, it's going to take 1 hour times 4, and it's going to say it's going to take me 4 hours to do this work. Okay? So that's what that quantity is. That's why it's important, and that's what these different production standards mean. That if you want to estimate per individual piece or per quantity item that you're doing, you can do that by selecting one of these 3 options down here. If you just want to estimate the total hours or the total minutes or the total seconds for the entire job, then you're going to want to go ahead and select one of these top 3. Okay? So we are saying it's going to take us 1 hour at $65 an hour. And here we have the ability to choose whether we want to do a margin or a markup. We're going to leave that as 0 because in our scenario, let's say I've already built my profit or my margin into my quoting rate. And so my estimated price is $65. So you can see how that now passes down through here. Our labor cost right here is $65. And again, we have the ability to mark up labor. We have the ability to mark up materials. And we have the ability to mark up additional sales costs. But for right now, again, I'm assuming that I've built all of my profit and all of my markup into my quoting rate. And so down here on alignment, I can also make an estimate here. I can say, okay, I think that's going to take 2 hours, and or maybe, I'm going to say we're good. We're at 30 minutes. So it'll take us 30 minutes to do an alignment at $65 an hour for $32.50. All right. So this is a time material job, right? I think it's going to take X amount of time and X amount of hours. And that it's also going to take a certain amount of material. and we're actually building our cost as we make this estimate. And so let's add our material. So under our task that we want to, so a tire install, well, we're going to install some tires, right? And so let's see if so on these, we're going to add these tires, and also if you have not watched the inventory video, I suggest you do it because it's going to explain why I just brought these in. Basically, I said that they were a kit part. I said that every time I do a tire, I'm also going to use a 1/2-inch valve stem, and so that's why those came in automatically. I really do recommend, if you're going to do some estimating and you're going to be using inventory, you go and watch our video series on inventory. It's probably an hour worth of videos, but it is well worth it to make it so that it's going to make it so much easier and quicker to pull in material if you do this. So we've selected that we want this particular tire. We've got our average unit price is $325, $233 for this. We're going to go ahead and we've got disable auto issue. Again, if you don't know what that means, we're not going to try to go into that. That's all discussed in our inventory video section. It's going to explain what those are. But for right now, we're going to enter a quantity in. Well, we want 4 tires. We're going to go ahead and put 4. Down here you can see that we've got the same thing. Just like we've got a total hours versus per piece. Down here we've got a per job versus per piece. And we're going to say, okay, we've got 4 tires per job. We're not going to mark those up, or maybe we do want to mark it up. We got a 20% margin on there. Boom. All right, and then we're going to need 4 valve stems. We're going to do a markup on that as well, and we're going to add 20% of that. And now we've got a total material price of $15.71. And if you see, we can come down here, we can see that we've got our labor cost and our material cost. And you see I marked those up individually. I can also come through and I can just say, if I wanted to, and I just said, hey, you know what, I always mark my material up 20%. I can remove that markup there, and I can just come right down here, add my markup, and add 20%. Easy as pie. So now we've got this. We've got our material costs. If our alignment, I don't know if there's alignment costs or materials. I don't know anything about tires, but we're going to say that our alignment, everything is just kind of included in the time that we worked all of our material costs into the labor for the time being. And so the last section we're going to look at is additional sales line. This is going to be a way for you to add just any sort of additional cost. Let's say if you had shipping or delivery, or maybe you've got a, what's one I always see? I always see like hazardous material. Fee. I see that a lot when I go to the mechanic. They say, oh, here's a hazardous material fee. And it's like for like throwing away the shop rags and stuff like that. And so this one, it's just a way for you to enter in items as you want to. So we're just saying $15. We've got 1, no markup. And we can see we've added that. And so what we've come up with is we've come up with the total sales cost, right? We've also come up with the total unit sales cost. Well, why is it the same? Well, it's because basically we said it was one vehicle. If we had said 4 tires or 4 installs, it would have taken that value, divided it by 4, and that would have been the unit sales. But you can see that we can get as complicated as we want. We can come through, and let's say we don't want the alignment to be part of this process. We can add another process into here, and we can, once we've added another process, you can see that brought in some things. Let's say, okay, I don't want a tire install here. Maybe they want to do some sort of install of, you go tearing it apart and you're like, you know what, your wheel bearing's bad or something shot like that. You can quickly come into here and you can quickly add a task and say, you know what, we've only got 2 tasks right here, but let's say you had a task that said just shop work or general labor and you build that out at $65. You can select that general labor, bring that in. You can estimate it's going to take an hour and a half, plus it's going to take these parts. It's going to take a wheel bearing, and it's going to take and you can quickly add that, and it's just as easy as pie, just so easy. and we added that in. We don't need any of this, so we can just come here. We're going to take this process out, and that's going to take the associated task with it as well, and we're right back to where we were before. So it's very, very easy to quickly and easily put these estimates in. And while it's doing this, it's generating a cost. It's generating these sales dollars. Now, what this is also doing is it's also going to generate an estimate of time and materials. And what that means is that we're going to be able to turn this quote and these estimates into a job. And once it's a job, that means that your guys are going to be able to start doing actual work into it. People are going to clock into the tire install task, and they're going to work on those tires. They're going to issue those. They're going to issue that material to the job. They're going to say, okay, yep, I used 4 of these, and you know what? I went to use one of the valve stems, and it broke, or something went wrong, and so I actually ended up using 5 valve stems. And they're going to tell you how much time they took, and maybe they took an hour, maybe they took 2 hours. But now you're going to be able to go and look at that actual versus estimated time, and you're going to be able to see how your actual work compares. And so not only are you getting that estimate, though, is it's also helped you to build this price. And so if we say generate quote, we're going to click generate quote because we're going to look at this quote, and then we're going to go back and do some adjustments to it. So here we have our quote, and you can see it's very simple. We've got a line number 1, we've got a description, and we've got a total cost, total rolled up cost. Let's say, though, that Frank comes back and he wants to know more details. We want to be able to show them how much labor we're spending on the tire install, how much we're charging specifically for the alignment, for the materials, stuff like that. So to do that, we're going to go back to step 2, and we're going to look at some of these things that we can do here. So if we look here, we've got 2 boxes. We've got to include as line item and exclude from price. Excluding from price we're going to talk about in a minute when we go over fixed price quotes, but we're just going to focus on including as line items. So what this means basically is right now we've just got a total rolled up cost, right? It's just $16.83. Well, let's watch what happens if I click this box. And to kind of make it easier to see, I'm going to kind of shrink this down here so it's really simple. Okay, so we can just see that our tasks are, we've got a tire install and alignment. I'm going to check this box right here, include as a line item, and we're going to click generate quote again. Now before, remember, it just said it had no details. So what it did is it broke it out, right? So now we've got a tire install for $65. We've got a labor cost of $32.50, a material cost of $15.71.18, and an additional sales cost of $15. So what that has done is that has kept everything kind of hidden for labor, material, and additional sales, but it's explicitly shown what we're charging for the tire install. Okay, let's go back and look at that again. And so it's separated out the hours associated with tire install and lumped all the other labor hours together as alignment. And so that's why we see that we've got a tire install and then we've got a labor. And it just so happens that our labor of $32.50, it just so happens that the only other labor we had in there was that alignment that was a half an hour. But if I come back now, if we go back to step 2, and let's check the box on the alignment. So just like we checked the box here, we're going to check this box right here. And we're going to say generate quote. And what you're going to see is you're going to see that labor is now gone. And the reason it's gone is because we've told the system that we want it to explicitly tell us how much for tire install and how much for alignment. What this does is this allows you to be able to give enough transparency that you can show what they're requiring, but at the same time, if there are certain things you want to hide and certain things you want to kind of mask so that it's not as clear what exactly you're charging, you have the ability to do so. And so, for a tire shop, saying that it's going to take an hour for a tire install, maybe you don't care. Maybe that's not a big deal. But let's say you're running something else and you don't want anybody to kind of know how you're coming to this price, you can choose to kind of obscure it, if you will. And just like we have material, we're saying, okay, yeah, it's going to be $15.71 for material. And maybe there's times when that's what you want to say. You don't want to go into any more details than that, because you don't want them to know, okay, it was $17 for this particular item because of whatever reason. But let's say also you do want to do that. You want to be able to show explicitly what everything costs. Again, you go back to your step 2. Our material, we remember, is underneath our tire install, so we're going to expand that. We've got our 2 materials, or 2 inventory items, and we're going to just check this box like this, include as a line item. Now if I check just the one, then this price right here is going to show up as a separate line item. And this particular item here, this valve stem, is going to be obscured, right? It's not going to say valve stem 1/2 inch. It's just going to say material $9.32, or actually I guess $11 or whatever it would be with the markup. So I'll show you that. So let's go take a look at that. Right now we've got, again, their markup 20% down here. So whatever that number is, I don't know. I mean, it's going to show. It's going to tell us what it is. But what we're going to see is we're going to see those tires broken out. And we're going to see that our valve stems are obscured, right? It just says material. I can again show those valve stems if I go back and I check that box right here. Regenerate the quote. And now you can see we've got it broken out to the valve stem 1/2 inch. So same thing with additional cells. We go back right now, it just says additional cells, doesn't really say what it is. Let's say we want to go back and show that by checking this box, include as a line item right here. Let's go back to here. And it is going to break out and say, hey, you know what? It's a hazardous material fee. And so these boxes down here, there's some additional boxes here. These boxes here at the bottom, here and here, that's just a way to, if I check this box, it's just going to automatically include all of those. It's going to automatically check all those boxes automatically. But through those include as a line item check boxes, you're able to break out or obscure the details of your quote. And again, you're able then to email these quotes directly or download that PDF and save them, email them however you want to. By default, Modius has a default quote form. It's very generic. It doesn't have really anything unique. You can put your logo on it. It'll have your address and things like that. But for a very reasonable price, we actually will customize this to meet exactly the needs of your quote. If you want it to look exactly like your existing quote that you send out now, we can modify these reports to make it look exactly like the report that you send out currently. And so please feel free to talk to us when it comes to modifying the quotes and things like that. It's really easy for us to do, and we can take care of that and make it so it meets exactly our needs. But that being said, this is how we make a quote from an estimate, right? We estimated material, we estimated time, we added markups, and that generated a price. It also generated estimates that are then passed on to the rest of Modius so that when work is performed, we can do an actual versus estimated analysis and be able to know how we're doing. And we can look at that on a task-by-task basis, or an employee-by-employee basis, or a job-by-job, or customer-by-customer. However you want to slice and dice it, you're able to look at that and kind of analyze those across the board. So the other type of quote, though, we want to talk about is a fixed price quote. And so let's go back to our quote listing. Let's make one of those. And for simplicity's sake, remember how we talked about how we could copy? We're going to go ahead and copy this one. You see here I've got a copy. and it is going to copy this and bring it over exactly like this. It's just giving it a new idea, Frank 2. And so we're going to say fixed cost, and we're going to leave everything else the same. Let's see, we're going to say one vehicle. We'll leave everything else the same. And we go to our estimate, we're going to see all of our stuff is already in there. If we expand this out, we've got our tire installed and everything. But we want to do a fixed cost. So just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and we're going to remove everything. In fact, let's just come up with this process. Just keep this whole process out. So now you can see, let's put that back to 0. Oh, and then we're going to generate a quote. Oh, never mind, it didn't make me do that. Okay, so we're back to where we've got nothing in here, right? So let's talk about the estimated quote versus the fixed price quote. So let's say for this tire shop, I don't charge anything. I'm trying to think of an example with a tire shop. I guess let's say I've got a promotion. It was in the newspaper and it says, hey, 4 tires for $400. Okay, and what tires are those? Maybe it's just a promotion. It's whatever 4 tires I happen to have that are cheap that I want to put on. But it can't cost more than $400, right? And so I want to charge $400. But I also want to be able to have an estimate. And I want that estimate because, again, I want to know if I think it's going to take an hour for my guys to do this particular task. I want to be able to track that because that's how we get better, right? We make an estimate, we have an actual. We make an estimate, we have an actual. We say it's going to take X amount of time, and we do the work. And we're either estimating too low, or our workers are too slow, or vice versa. But through doing this over and over again, we start to get trends. We start to be able to see, the goal being that our workers become more efficient and we become better quoters and better estimators, and that kind of cycle continues on and we get better. So we want to always have an estimate, but we don't always want to generate a price from that estimate. In our last section, we generated a price for the estimate. In this section, we don't. We've got a fixed price. The deal was 4 tires for $400. Well, I got to charge $400, but I still, again, want to have an estimate. So let's go over how we can do that. So we know that it's going to cost $400, and so we can kind of start in 2 ways. We can build the job just like we did, or we can start with the sales line. But for simplicity's sake, let's do it the exact same way we did the last quote. So we're going to say add subjob, select our department, save. We're going to add our process, same exact process. You can see it brought our stuff in. We're going to do the exact same thing. Let's see what we said. No, we said total hours. Huh? No markup. Add items. I think we just grab that one. Four, boom. Okay, and then what did we say? We said total. Yep, and then we did a half hour. Okay, so we're now set up to right where we were before. I happened to grab a different tire, so this one's 150, which works because hey, we're only going to charge $400. We're not going to lose as much money as we thought. So the problem is right now is we put our estimates in. The thing is though is that we're charging $706. So we don't want to charge $706. The deal was $400. So we're going to do 2 things. Okay? First of all, remember we talked about including as a line item? Well, now we're going to want to come over and look at this exclude from price. So if we see right here, we've got our total down here. And let's check this box right here. So we've got our total labor price at $97.50. We're going to say exclude from price. And you can see that it just took our labor out. Come over here, exclude from price. I'm clicking this so it excludes everything. And you can see that it took out our labor cost. If we generate our quote, we can see our quote now is $0. Okay? So we still have an estimate, right? We still say it's going to take 1 hour of tire install time. It's going to take 4 tires, 4 valve stems, and a half hour of alignment. All that estimate, all those estimated times and material values are going to get passed on to the job still, which we want. But the price is not being generated from those estimates. So now we need to add that price back into the quote, though. And so that's another thing you can use an additional sales lines for, is we're going to say add a row. We're going to say 4 for 400 promo deal. And we're going to say it is $400 and it is one. And we're going to split this out and we're going to say include as a line item because we want to see this. We don't want to see anything else. We just want to see this. And we're going to say generate quote. And now what we've got is we now have a quote that shows that you got one 4 for 400 promo deal for $400, right? And we still have all of our estimates. And that is important because obviously you do, just from the quote right there, we can see, just by generating that estimate and generating the price from the estimate initially, you saw it was going to be $706. We're charging $400. That's a heck of a loss leader. So hopefully we've got another plan in there. Hopefully they're going to come back and buy something else at some point because we're losing $300. And so this was kind of a weird example. A good example that we've seen from one of our other customers is we've got a customer that quotes parts and paints parts, and they usually do a quote. And so somebody brings a part in, they quote them, and then they paint them. One example, though, that they don't do this is on railing. So for railing, they have a kind of a deal where they just say, you know what, any kind of railing you bring in railing, we charge you by the foot, the linear foot. And so, if somebody may bring something else in, and they're going to sit there and say, I think it's going to take about an hour of this, an hour of that, a couple pounds of material, a couple gallons of material, whatever it may be. And that's how they'll quote their other stuff. But when somebody brings in railing, they're going to do the same thing because, they're still going to estimate their times because they still want to be able to see how good they are estimating and whether they want to give their guys an idea of how long it should take to accomplish this work. But then they do the same thing. They say they put those, they exclude that from the price, all those line items, and then they just add another line item. To give an example, they add another line item here, and they would say, "Oops, we went too far. Let's get back to where we need to be." So in that example, they would come down to additional sales lines, and they'd say, railing cost or whatever. And they may say, it's $15 per linear feet. You've got 25 linear feet. All right, it's $375. So they may generate a price. They're going to use their estimates and their materials and their labor to generate a price, but they're going to exclude that price. And what they're going to do is add that fixed cost so that it just generates that. So depending on what you do and how you quote, if you're an electrician and you say, I think it's going to take me 4 hours on this job, but the way you charge, you just say, hey, I charge $100 per outlet. And it's 5 outlets, so it's, outlets. And it's $5, it's $100, and there's 5 outlets. Again, however you quote, the system is able to make adjustments for that. So if you're owning a business and you're quoting, if you're a landscape company, you say, hey, you know what, I charge $300 a month for a yard, then you're going to say a yard. Or if you come and say, you know what, I quote hourly and I'm going to give you a price. I think it's going to take me 7 hours. It's going to cost this material and it's going to cost this exact amount. Then you're going to focus on building your estimate and you're going to build your price from there, and you're not going to exclude from price. So depending on what your end goal is, what you want to give to the customer, is going to help you to decide whether you're going to do an estimate with a quote or whether you can do a fixed price quote. And with Modius, you can see that it's very easy to do this, and it's very easy to generate a price from an estimate, or it's very easy to generate an estimated time and then go and override that with just a fixed price. Regardless of what you do, though, once you've generated your quote and you've either saved it or you've emailed it and whatever you've done, whoops, I need to go back. We want to go back and look at this quote listing. And so once the work has come and they've accepted that, you can come here and you're going to convert that to a job. So let's say Frank comes back and says, you know what, that sounds like a great deal. I want to do it. You can come here and say convert to job. Once that converts to job, it's going to take all of that data that you've got and it's going to put it right into a job. You have the ability to put an invoice date. We're going to say that you can put your start and end date, PO if they've got it. You're going to save that. And here we've got our job. If we open up, we can see we've got all of the tasks, the process, and everything we've selected. If we come over to our estimates tab, you can see we've got our estimates that we've created in here. If we need to make modification of those, we can. But it's now a job, and it's now able to start getting work done on it. And with that, we've gone through and we've now shown you how to create a quote and to generate that quote from both an estimate or from a fixed cost. Again, we've got a lot of videos on inventory and on getting set up. If you haven't watched those and you've watched this video, or if it's been a while since you've watched those, really do recommend that you go back, take a look at those, and just to refresh your memory. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. I hope you've learned something. As always, feel free to reach out to one of our team if you've got questions, and we'll take care of you and help you out with anything you guys need.